Apple's iPhone gross margin is 37%. Apple Services gross margin is 73%. Services is 25% of revenue, but 41% of total gross profit. The most valuable company in the world quietly stopped being a hardware company by 2022. Wall Street has not caught up. The iPhone is not where Apple makes its money anymore. It is the storefront for the actual business. Apple reports 5 segments: iPhone, Mac, iPad, wearables, and services. For 25 years, the iPhone was the business. High-margin hardware at scale. Tim Cook took over in 2011 and inherited a hardware-centric P&L. By his Q1 2017 earnings call, he started publicly framing services as a strategic growth engine. By 2024, services revenue had grown 3.65 times, while iPhone revenue had grown 1.27 times. The income statement quietly inverted. Decompose Apple's fiscal 2024 P&L. Hardware, iPhone plus Mac plus iPad plus wearables, generated $295 billion at a blended 36% gross margin. That is roughly $106 billion of hardware gross profit. Services, $96 billion at 73% gross margin. That is $70 billion of services gross profit. On half the revenue, services delivers nearly the same gross profit as all the hardware combined. What is services? Apple does not break it out in the 10K, but court filings and analyst triangulation give us 5 lines. App Store commissions, 15 to 30% of every digital transaction across 2.2 billion iOS devices, roughly $25 to $30 billion a year. Google paying Apple $18 to $20 billion to be the default Safari search engine. That number is now public from the US versus Google trial exhibits. Apple Music, iCloud, Apple TV Plus, Fitness Plus, News Plus subscriptions, roughly $22 to $25 billion. AppleCare hardware insurance, $9 billion. Apple's own advertising business, App Store search ads and Apple News ads, $5 to $7 billion, growing 25% a year. None of these existed at meaningful scale before 2010. All of them required the iPhone installed base to exist first. Walk one iPhone owner through the system. Customer buys an iPhone 15 for $1,099. Apple keeps about $400 as gross profit at 36% hardware margin. That is the visible transaction. Now follow what happens over the next 3 years. They subscribe to Apple Music. $10.99 a month times 36 months is $396. They buy AppleCare Plus, $199. They make App Store in-app purchases averaging $30 a month times 36 months is over $1,000 in app spend, of which Apple keeps $200 to $300 in commissions. They use Safari, which means Google pays Apple roughly $10 to $15 per device per year for search default placement. Total services revenue from that one iPhone owner over 3 years, roughly $700 to $900 at 73% margin. Services gross profit per device, $500 to $650 over the device's life. That exceeds the $400 hardware gross profit on the original sale. The services profit per device exceeds the hardware profit per device. Selling the hardware was just the customer acquisition step. Single cleanest data point in the public record. Apple Services quarterly revenue grew from $7.2 billion in Q1 fiscal 2017 to $26.3 billion in Q1 fiscal 2025. That is 3.65 times in 8 years. 17% compound annual growth. Over the same window, iPhone quarterly revenue grew from $54.4 billion to $69.1 billion. 1.27 times, 3% compound annual growth. Services grew almost 6 times faster than iPhone over the most important 8 years of Apple's modern era. Tim Cook's actual quote on the Q4 fiscal 2017 earnings call, quote, "Services has become a meaningful part of our company and the growth there has been incredible," end quote. He repeated structurally identical language every single quarter from 2018 onward. The strategic narrative on every quarterly call now centers on services. The marketing narrative externally still says, the iPhone company. 2 stories, Two audiences, same company. Here is what nobody is saying out loud. The DOJ filed an antitrust suit against Apple in March 2024, targeting the App Store commission structure and the iPhone Plus services bundling. The EU Digital Markets Act started enforcement the same month. Both regulators are aiming directly at the largest single services revenue line. If the App Store commission is forced down from 30% to a payment processor level 3%, analyst estimates put the gross profit impact at $15 to $20 billion annually. That is roughly 25 to 30% of total services gross profit gone overnight. Apple's legal defense, quote, "The App Store is inseparable from the iPhone product experience," end quote. That is structurally in direct conflict with the investor-facing narrative that services is a standalone growth engine. The legal team needs the App Store to be part of the device. The investor relations team needs services to be its own business. The regulator sees the contradiction. Lesson: when a business sells a high-perceived value product at moderate margin yet posts software company net income, look for the recurring layer the hardware enables. For Apple, it is services. For Walmart, the supplier float. For Costco, the membership fee. For Amazon, AWS plus ads. The companies that win for decades figure out how to convert one-time hardware buyers into recurring revenue captives. The hardware is the funnel. The subscription is the business. The regulator sees through the disguise faster than the consumer does.